The presentation hall at West Point Tech Park had this glossy, overstaged calm, like one of those luxury car commercials where everything's clean and slow motion. Polished walnut conference table, ergonomic chairs that probably cost more than my first car, and a row of windows too tinted to let in anything real. Maybe that's why it felt like a set. A place where everyone was acting like themselves. 30 people. VPs, directors, marketing leads, the kind who drink pour-over coffee and casually talk about seed rounds and hypergrowth. No one breathed too loud. No one checked their phone. Everyone watched the front of the room like it was church. And the guy preaching? Adam. My wife Lena's new boss. Head of strategy. Imported from San Francisco with a resume you couldn't fact-check because half the companies he scaled no longer existed. Still, he wore confidence like cologne. Thick, synthetic, and strong enough to cover the stench of something rotting underneath. He'd been talking for 20 minutes straight about positioning for the next frontier, which mostly involved him quoting himself. But then, just as the slides ran out and the intern fumbled with the HDMI cord, Adam glanced at me, just for a second, and then he said it. "You're just furniture, Nick. No one sees you. No one hears you." There it was. The room didn't gasp or freeze. It just kind of held still, like when the power goes out and nobody moves because you're waiting to see if it's real. He said it with a smirk, like it was just another bullet point in his mental deck. Like it wasn't something you'd say to another man sitting right there, in front of his wife, in a room full of people. I felt 30 heads pretend not to turn. I didn't look at him. I looked at Lena. She didn't look at me. She stared ahead, spine straight, hands clasped over the folder on her lap. Not shaking, not smiling, not moving. Her shoes caught my eye. White pumps. Sharp lines. Definitely not the pair I bought her for the promotion. Those had been navy modest. These were expensive, designed to be noticed. My stomach twisted. A gift from him? Before I could sit with that thought too long, Adam kept going. "Let her shine," he said, like he was still riffing. "Don't weigh her down." He wasn't even looking at me anymore. He was back to the screen, pointing at some upward trending graph about market influence. But the damage had already been done. Everyone heard it. They just didn't know what to do with it. Some gave that tight corporate half-smile, the kind that says, "Not my circus." One guy from IT nervously sipped his coffee like it might help him disappear. I didn't stand up. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't throw the chair like a part of me wanted to. Instead, I smiled. Not a good-natured smile. Not one you'd confuse with forgiveness. It was crooked, slow. The kind of smile I hadn't worn in years. The last time was in high school, the night someone tried to steal my brother's bike outside the rec center. I didn't say a word that night either. Just smiled like that and took a step forward. Some part of me remembered that moment now, and I let it settle in my chest like a loaded P***N. Because here's what Adam didn't know. I wasn't just Lena's husband. I wasn't just the guy who showed up to company mixers and sat quietly at the edge of the conversation. I wasn't invisible. I was watching. And more importantly, I was ready. Tucked into the inside pocket of my blazer, clipped just above my phone, was a tiny voice recorder. Not the cheap kind. I'd bought it 3 weeks earlier. After the second offsite Lena came back from with stories that didn't add up. That afternoon, she told me Adam had offered her a spot on the upcoming strategy tour. Some elite think tank thing across New York, London, and Tokyo. Only 10 employees chosen. Lena acted surprised. But when I asked how long she'd known, she hesitated. The recorder had been running ever since. It wasn't paranoia. It was instinct, because something had changed. Lena had started dressing differently for work. Sleeker, bolder. She started locking her phone. Her laughter changed. She stopped laughing with me and started saving it for her notifications. And every time I asked about Adam, she'd either over-explain or change the subject entirely. But I didn't accuse her. I planned. I started learning the layout of West Point Tech Park. 2 buildings, 12 floors, 3 security teams. They thought they had tight infrastructure. What they didn't know was that most of their surveillance still ran off an old cloud service that never updated its admin passwords after a migration in April. I knew that because I'd built the original prototype for a similar system 5 years ago. I knew the back doors. I knew how to get in without setting off alarms. So I did. Last Friday, I walked into Building B with Lena's old badge. The security guard barely glanced at me. I took the stairs, checked the server closets. I found what I needed. Internal feeds, full audio-video coverage of every executive floor. Downloaded 3 weeks' worth. Uploaded it to a cloud drive that only I could access. Then walked out. Today, the recorder was insurance. In case he said something reckless. And then he did. "You're just furniture, Nick." He thought I was a seat filler. A dull husband too afraid to challenge him. A man who wouldn't bite back. He thought Lena was his. That was his first mistake. Because I wasn't just recording what he said. I was studying everything else. His mannerisms. The way he looked at her when she spoke during meetings. The way she used to check with me after a sentence and now checked with him. The way he leaned in when she talked, not just interested, invested. You learn a lot when people think you're no one. They get sloppy. They overshare. Adam was already slipping. I noticed he kept 2 phones. One for work, one he always silenced during meetings. I'd watched enough footage to know he never left them unattended, except when he used the executive gym, which he visited every Wednesday at 6:15 p.m. sharp. I was already working on getting footage from that locker room hallway. I also knew he had a pattern. He parked in the west lot, always 4th row, always near the stairwell. Lena started parking there too, even though her assigned spot was on the opposite side. I hadn't said anything, but I took pictures. I made maps. And after today, I had something better, a motive. Adam humiliated me in a room full of executives. He did it with intent. It wasn't spontaneous. It was a message, not to me but to Lena. He wanted her to see me as small. He wanted to make her feel like choosing him would be leveling up. That she could outgrow me. He didn't know I'd already beg *N collecting the proof. Emails she thought she deleted. Hotel reservations under her company card. A voice message he left her one night when she was stuck in traffic. I'd recovered it from her old iPad's iCloud cache. I hadn't confronted her. Not yet. But the folder sat on my desktop, labeled simply L. So I sat there, in that too bright, too clean conference room, letting him believe I was harmless. I watched him nod to Lena, saw her eyes flicker toward mine for a half-second. Barely long enough to register. But it was there. A trace of guilt? Doubt? Couldn't tell. I didn't flinch. I held that crooked smile like armor. I waited until the meeting ended. Waited as people gathered their laptops, murmured safe little comments like, "Great insights and tight session." As if nothing awkward had happened. Lena walked ahead of me. Adam stayed behind to chat with the CFO. As I stood to leave, I turned and looked at him one more time. Not a glare, just a glance. Measured, quiet. He didn't look back. He should have. Because whatever he thought today was a power move, a jab, a casual humiliation, he didn't realize the game had already started. And I wasn't playing to get even. I was playing to end it. The conference ended at 3:47 p.m. But Lena didn't leave with me. She didn't even pretend to. As the rest of the team trickled down to the lobby, talking about dinner plans and ride shares, I watched from the glass staircase as she stepped into the private elevator. The one that only required a level 4 badge. The one that went straight to the rooftop lounge. That wasn't her level, but Adam's? His name was on the system. I knew exactly where she was going. I'd seen that elevator pattern twice before. Both times after long strategy meetings. Both times after Adam had spoken off the record to selected team leads. She'd mentioned the lounge once. Said it was nothing more than a glorified break room. But her voice had caught mid-sentence, like she realized she'd said too much. That's when the pattern started forming. The longer I watched, the clearer it became. Every Tuesday and Thursday, Lena stayed late. Her calendar just said, team alignment. Vague corporate speak that could mean anything. On those same nights, Adam's location history, yes, I had access to that too. showed him in the building long past standard hours. Usually on the 12th floor. Sometimes in the private parking level. But this time I wasn't waiting to cross-check data. This time I followed. I took the elevator to 11, then the stairs to 12. Slower, quieter. I didn't peek through the rooftop doors. I didn't need to. The lounge had floor-to-ceiling windows. From the hallway angle between two blinds slightly out of sync, I had a partial view inside. They weren't kissing, not touching, not obviously guilty. But Lena's hand was resting on his chest. Not like a flirt, but like familiarity. Like she'd been there before. Like she belonged there. Adam was leaning against the edge of the marble counter, looking down at her like she was the only one who understood him. I'd seen that look before, on my own face years ago when we were still new, still unsure. When I was the one she leaned into after long days, telling me about her small wins and quiet doubts. Now she was telling him, and the way she smiled, slow, tilted, absent of performance. It said everything. That was the kind of smile you give someone who already knows the worst of you and hasn't left. I should have felt rage, or heartbreak, or the kind of heartbreak people write songs about. But mostly, I felt cold. That's how I knew it was real. The numbness. I walked back down the stairs, took my time. No cameras in the stairwell. No one would see me leave. Outside, in the parking garage, I stood by my car for a full 5 minutes before they came down. Lena exited first, still laughing at something he'd said. Adam followed a few steps behind, not close enough to raise suspicion. Not close enough to touch. They weren't stupid. They didn't park side by side. But they didn't act like people trying to hide either. They acted like people used to walking that line just barely inside it. They parted at the exit, each heading to their own car. That's when I stepped forward. Lena didn't flinch when she saw me. She didn't gasp, didn't reach for a lie. She just froze. And that told me everything. I held out the folder. Simple, thin, neutral gray. Inside photographs, time-stamped, geotagged. 2 of them entering the same hotel in Chicago last month. During a business trip that was allegedly packed with roundtables and panel events. A copy of the hotel reservation under her name. *TS of her itinerary that left out the extra night. 1 receipt for an in-room dinner with 2 entrees and a wine bottle I knew she didn't like. Her eyes scanned the top page. She didn't cry, didn't argue, just turned the folder over and held it like something that belonged to someone else. She hadn't come to apologize. She came to measure how much I knew. And worse, she still thought she had control. That was the second time I knew something inside her had shifted. She wasn't waiting to confess. She wasn't going to beg. Lena, the woman I married, would have said my name by now. Would have asked if I was okay. This Lena looked tired. Tired of hiding, maybe, or tired of pretending. But not sorry. We stood there for a long moment in the humming silence of the garage. Overhead, the lights flickered like they always did when it got humid. Her car beeped twice as she unlocked it. I stayed standing. "You're not going to say anything?" she finally asked. "I said everything already," I replied. "When?" "By handing you that." She blinked slowly, like she wasn't sure what game we were playing. That's the thing about people who lie well. They expect the conversation to be about denial and defense. Not exposure. Not strategy. "I wasn't trying to hurt you," she said. That line. The fallback of every person who gets caught. As if intention rewrites behavior. "It's not about trying," I said. "It's about doing." She opened her mouth, then closed it. I watched her fingers tighten around the edge of the folder. She didn't ask where I got it. She didn't have to. She knew I wasn't guessing. She turned toward her car, hesitated, then said, "Are you going to tell anyone?" And that was the moment something inside me flipped. Because she didn't ask, "Can we fix this?" Or "What do we do now?" Or "Are you okay?" She asked about exposure, about damage control, about how far I planned to go. That's when I realized something. I'd been waiting for a reason to stop, to turn back, to find a version of her that still matched the woman I used to come home to. But she wasn't there. Not anymore. This wasn't about saving a marriage. This was about drawing a line. No, I said. I'm not going to tell anyone. Relief crossed her face. Too fast, too visible. I let it sit for a second, then added, I don't have to. She looked confused. What does that mean? It means, I said, the people who need to know already do. Her jaw tensed. Her eyes flicked toward the exit, like she suddenly realized how public a parking garage could be, like she was calculating cameras and angles and witness risk. She still thought this was just about a folder. She still didn't realize I'd been building a whole architecture of truth beneath her feet. Emails, messages, metadata. And not just about her. About Adam. Because what I'd discovered in the past few weeks, and I mean really discovered, was that Lena wasn't the first. Maybe not even the third. There were others. And not all of them left quietly. Some still worked in the company. Some had chosen to move departments. Some had simply disappeared from Slack and never returned. But the common thread, all of them had been praised, fast-tracked, and then quietly reassigned after getting too close to Adam. I had names. Carol was the most recent one. Adam's wife. I'd reached out to her through a burner email. She responded in under 10 minutes. She wasn't surprised. She was ready. I've been waiting for someone to confirm it, she wrote. Meet me. I'll bring what I have. You bring yours. That was last Friday. We met at the bar attached to a boutique investment firm downtown. It was sleek, dark wood, overpriced cocktails. Carol showed up exactly on time. No makeup, no rings, just a small leather notebook and a tired look in her eyes that said she'd lived this twice already. I don't want revenge, she told me, sipping from a water she didn't order. I want it documented. I want it undeniable, not just a scandal, a reckoning. She slid the notebook toward me. Inside, names, dates, patterns. One note that said, check flights, Lisbon, May 2022. Rachel K. That was one of Lena's old friends. Someone she stopped talking to after a disagreement. I closed the notebook and nodded. This wasn't about heartbreak anymore. This was about exposure. And I wasn't alone. Lena, standing across from me now, had no idea how far this had already gone. She still thought the worst thing that had happened was me seeing her hand on his chest. But the truth? That was just the surface. I looked her in the eye and said, I hope you get home safe. And then I turned and walked away. Not because I didn't have more to say, but because she'd already heard everything she needed. And the rest? The rest was about to speak for itself. The first time I met Carol in person, I was already tired of being careful. We traded a dozen messages. No names, no direct references, just initials, timestamps, little breadcrumbs only people like us would understand. People who'd been played, minimized, told to calm down, while their lives were being slowly rewritten behind their backs. She chose the bar, low-lit, upscale, one of those places where no one asks questions unless you're wearing the wrong shoes. I wore the same suit I'd worn to Adam's last company mixer. I wanted it to mean something. She arrived exactly at 7 p.m., sat down across from me, and ordered nothing. I'm not here for drinks, she said. I'm here to finish something. She wasn't what I expected. I imagined someone loud, dramatic, the kind of woman who throws glasses in hotel lobbies or cries during depositions. But Carol was composed, surgical. She pulled a worn leather folder from her tote bag and laid it on the table between us. Then she slid it toward me like it was a bill she knew I could afford to pay. Inside were names. 9 of them. All women who'd worked under Adam in the past 5 years. All of them promoted quickly, praised publicly, then reassigned, isolated, or invited to pursue new opportunities shortly after. She had dates, job titles, and the exact months they'd left. Most of them lined up with new quarterly initiatives he took credit for. I added 2 more names from my own notes. Lena was one. Rachel K., her old friend, was the other. They all left quietly, I said. They were encouraged to, Carol replied. Sometimes with severance, sometimes with silence, and sometimes with threats. Lawsuits, whispers, she said, about professionalism and Team morale. The kind of poison that doesn't need evidence. Just suggestion. I nodded slowly, turning one of the pages. Some of these women I'd seen once, maybe twice, at company events. Smiling. Polished. Like Lena used to be. Before the light behind her eyes started going somewhere else. Why me? I asked. Why now? She didn't hesitate. Because you're the first one who didn't disappear. The first one who didn't just take the hit and vanish. You handed Lena that folder in a parking garage, knowing what it would start. And you didn't run. She leaned forward. I don't need fire. I need friction. Enough of it to make sparks in the right places. That's what you are. I didn't respond right away. I was still thinking about Lena's face when I gave her the folder. She wasn't angry. She wasn't even scared. She looked tired. Like she knew this moment would come, but hoped it wouldn't be me who brought it. I don't want revenge, I said finally. Neither do I, Carol replied. I want exposure. I want rot pulled out from under the paint. I want him unrecommendable. We sat in silence for a while, letting that word hang in the air like a sentence. Unrecommendable. It doesn't mean jail. It doesn't mean headlines. It means his name never comes up in a room where people are deciding who to trust next. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a flash drive. Black, unmarked, encrypted. This is everything I have, I said. Audio, schedules, badge data, cross-matched travel receipts, even a few videos from building security. Passwords on the last file. She took it without a word. What about you? She asked. What do you want out of this? I thought for a second. I want him to see me. She didn't laugh, didn't blink. That's fair, she said. We parted quietly. No handshake. No promises. Just two people walking out of a bar in different directions, carrying pieces of a bigger truth. Back home, I opened a secure folder I'd named Mosaic. Inside, everything. I had Lena's full travel calendar. Down to the Uber receipts she forgot were linked to our joint account. Adam's dinner reservations matched perfectly. The Chicago trip? I had *TS from the hotel lobby. Facial recognition software didn't lie, even if the company PR department would. But the most damning piece came from something stupid. Adam, like a lot of men who think they're untouchable, kept personal notes in cloud drafts, the kind that never got sent, never technically existed, but still lingered in autofill. I found one of them when I accessed the metadata on his shared strategy docs. It read, "If he ever finds out, I'll handle it. He's predictable." A sentence. Not even a full plan. But it told me everything about how he saw me. A man too harmless to worry about. Too slow to outmaneuver him. That sentence became the title of the email I drafted that night. Subject. As a courtesy. The message body was short. Please see attached files regarding internal conduct and potential exposure risk. You may find them relevant before year-end reviews. I blind copied 11 people. 3 VPs, 2 HR directors, 4 board advisors, and 1 journalist who'd written an award-winning piece last year about corporate abuse in fast-scaling tech firms. I didn't ask them to act. I just gave them the fire. Then I went to bed. The next morning, I woke up to a calendar notification from the company intranet. Anonymous feedback channels open. Report concerns regarding management conduct, followed by a message from HR. We've launched an internal review into recent allegations of unprofessional behavior. If you have relevant information, please submit it directly via the secure portal. It had only been 6 hours. By 10 a.m., whispers turned into group threads. I wasn't on any of them, but *TS started coming my way. Posts on internal Slack channels, private group chats, words like favoritism, pattern, quiet departures. Someone leaked the hotel logs anonymously. Another added *TS of texts Adam had sent during off hours. The tone was mentorship. The content, suggestive, just suggestive enough. By noon, the rumors hit LinkedIn. A vague but scathing post appeared from a former employee. When power protects charm instead of character, companies rot from the inside. No names, no tags, but people understood. Then Carol texted me. Just 2 words. He knows. By 3 p.m. Adam vanished from group threads. His public calendar cleared. No more meetings. No new invites. And Lena, she messaged me. Not a call. Not even a voicemail. Just a simple text. I hope we can still talk. That was all it said. Not, I'm sorry. Not, I didn't know. Just that. Like she still believed there was space for conversation. But there wasn't. Not anymore. Because here's what she didn't understand. The talking had already started, just not between us. At 5:34 p.m. I received a single sentence from someone in legal. I won't say who. They wrote, "You didn't start this. But thank you for not letting it stay buried." I didn't respond. Not because I was being noble, but because that sentence was enough. They knew. Not just about Adam. Not just about Lena. But about the system that let this happen over and over again. And the man they once called furniture? He'd become the one thing Adam never saw coming. A mirror. Later that night I took a walk. The air was cold, crisp. The kind that makes every breath feel earned. I passed a bench we used to sit on. Me and Lena. Back when her hand found mine without thinking. Before meetings became excuses. Before ambition became an alibi. I didn't stop, because nostalgia is a poor map, and I was done retracing old steps. The next move wasn't about her, or him. It was about what I would build with the space they left behind. Not silence, but structure. And the truth? It echoes louder when no one's trying to sell it. I didn't go nuclear. That's what people expect when you say you've been betrayed. A fiery, emotional spectacle. Something messy and loud and full of broken glass. But that's the thing about people like Adam. They're built to survive impact. What they can't handle is erosion. So I didn't scream. I didn't leak anything to tabloids. I didn't upload proof to Reddit or tag the company in a viral thread. I just passed the right materials into the right hands. No names. No claims. Just evidence. Documents labeled by timestamp and internal IDs. Cross-referenced project promotions. Slack exports where Lena's name was repeatedly attached to initiatives that mysteriously got credited to Adam. *TS of the quiet pattern. Talented women fast-tracked, praised, then sidelined once the dynamics shifted. Some left quietly, some transferred, some disappeared entirely from the org tree. I didn't even have to spin it. The story told itself. And once it landed in the inboxes of legal, HR, and 3 board advisors who prided themselves on culture-first leadership, the gears started turning. Slowly, quietly, but they turned. By the following Wednesday, the internal intranet lit up. It started with vague HR memos. "We are conducting a comprehensive review of leadership structure and mentorship practices." Then came the anonymous survey links. Then the Slack whispers. You could feel it in the air, that thick corporate tension. Meetings suddenly rescheduled. Project leads replaced. Unreadable expressions in the break room. The oxygen shifted. Everyone smelled smoke. No one said fire. And Adam? He got quiet. The man who once responded to emails within 4 minutes, who always had a snarky quip or branded quote, suddenly stopped replying altogether. His calendar was still there, full of future plans, check-ins, product syncs. But he wasn't showing up. Not to stand-ups. Not to feedback sessions. Not even to the Friday lunch and learn he created. It was like watching a bridge buckle in slow motion. The weight hadn't changed, but the foundation had cracked. I watched it all unfold from the sidelines. No longer a ghost, but not a presence either. Somewhere in between. The shadow of a man people were now wondering about. And Lena? She noticed. She sent the first message on a Thursday evening. "Hey, hope you're okay. Can we talk?" I didn't reply. The next came 3 days later. "I know things are crazy right now. I never meant for it to fall apart like this." Still, I said nothing. She followed up again, longer this time. "I don't know what you've heard or what you think you know. But I never wanted to hurt you. Everything just got out of control. I miss how things used to be. Please, let's talk before this gets worse." Before this gets worse. That was the tell. She wasn't writing to me. She was writing to whatever version of me she still believed existed. The quiet one, the predictable one. The one who'd carry her secrets like a dutiful husband even after she'd quietly deleted me from her world. But I wasn't that man anymore. And more importantly, she had no idea where I stood in all this. Because what I'd learned over the past month, what all of this had shown me, was that control doesn't come from being loud. It comes from being underestimated. And they had underestimated me to the point of erasure. That was their mistake. So no, I didn't respond to Lena. I let the silence do the talking. Because the talking, it was happening elsewhere. That weekend, Carol looped me into a blind thread titled Red Line. It was populated by 6 aliases. I recognized none of the names, but I knew their stories. One of them had been relocated under the guise of career broadening. Another had signed an NDA she now regretted. A third had left the company and was now a DEI consultant, quietly gathering stories under the radar. Together, they'd compiled a timeline stretching back 6 years. Everything Adam had touched, manipulated, groomed into submission. Carol dropped the flash drive into the thread like a match. Inside, over 40 files. Some from me, some from them. Each piece had been vetted, time-stamped, and anonymized where necessary. No rage, no slander, just pattern. And pattern is impossible to ignore. Someone on the thread, alias Saturn Returns, uploaded a legal packet formatted like a whistleblower report. I don't know how they got it. I didn't ask. But it had everything. Org charts, role histories, expense audits, testimony excerpts. And more damning than any photo or text. A note at the bottom. 10 names. 1 man. 6 years. 1 pattern. They weren't after jail time. They were after reputation. And that's exactly what started crumbling next. It began with recruitment. A senior candidate pulled out mid-cycle, cited internal controversy as the reason. Then an investor flagged concerns about leadership clarity and postponed funding conversations. Not pulled, just paused. But everyone knew what that meant. Then someone on Twitter posted a cryptic thread about a toxic golden boy in tech strategy, whose mentorship was a performance in proximity. It didn't name Adam. It didn't have to. The algorithm took care of the rest. People whispered. **TS spread. LinkedIn connections dwindled. And one by one, like clockwork, Adam's endorsements began disappearing. His posts went from slick to silent. The kind of digital muting that happens when people don't want their names near yours. And through it all, Lena kept trying. She emailed me again, then texted. Each message more carefully worded. Less personal. More legal. It wasn't an apology. It was a paper trail. Proof that she'd reached out. That she'd attempted to communicate. That she was still, in her mind, being reasonable. But none of it landed. Because by then, the internal audit had **N. And when internal audits start, no one is innocent. Not really. Not when they knew and said nothing. Not when they benefited. Not when they watched people disappear and thought silence was loyalty. So Lena wasn't just caught in the blast. She was part of the structure. I didn't celebrate. There were no drinks, no phone calls, no secret fist pumps in the dark. Because this wasn't revenge. It was accounting. The slow, quiet kind that doesn't ask for justice, just balance. And eventually that balance came. Adam was placed on leave. Lena stopped coming into the office. And I went for a run. 6 miles. No music. Just breath and concrete and a heartbeat that finally felt like it belonged to me again. Because the truth is, I didn't need them to fall. I just needed them to stop standing on me like I was part of the floor. Back at home, I lit a candle, Lena's old favorite scent, and let it burn until the room felt unfamiliar. I opened our old cloud drive and deleted every shared folder, every note, every trace of us. And when I closed the laptop, I didn't feel victorious. I felt clean, which, for the first time in a long time, was enough. I found the letter 3 days after Lena left. It wasn't mailed. It wasn't slipped under my door. It was sitting on the kitchen table, bold, obvious, like it had every right to be there. The envelope was unsealed, just folded once. No name on the front. She knew I'd open it. She knew I'd read it. That was the point. There was a time when her handwriting could break me. I used to recognize her mood by the way she dotted her eyes. A little high when she was rushed. A tiny circle when she was in love. I told myself I wouldn't care, but the second I saw the first word, Nick, I felt that familiar weight in my chest. Not anger, not longing, just that old reflex to lean in. But I didn't sit down. I read it standing up, one hand on the back of the chair I no longer pulled out for her. It wasn't long, maybe a page and a half. Black ink, no scribbles, no hesitation. Like she'd rehearsed it. Nick, I'm not writing this to ask for forgiveness. I know better, but I think you deserve to understand what it was. This wasn't a love story gone wrong. It wasn't a tragic accident or a fling that got out of hand. It was survival. You always wanted the world to make sense, to be fair, to be earned, to follow rules. But the world I was in didn't reward effort. It rewarded visibility. Adam saw me. He saw potential and didn't ask me to wait for someone to catch up. You were always kind, always present, but you didn't want to win. You wanted to be seen. There's a difference. And maybe that's what made me drift. I stopped wanting to be loved gently. I started needing to be accelerated. I didn't plan to betray you. I planned to outgrow you. I know how that sounds. But I also know you. And I know deep down you'll understand. I'm not asking you to forget. Or to speak to me again. I just hope that someday you'll let go of the version of me you built. The real me was never coming back. Lena, I read it twice. Not because I didn't get it the first time, but because I couldn't believe how carefully she'd avoided the one word that might have meant something. Sorry. It wasn't an apology. It was a pitch, a closing argument, a curated logic loop meant to justify every inch of betrayal, wrapped in the language of maturity and truth. But here's what stuck with me most. Not what she said, but what she believed, that I wouldn't finish what I started, that I'd see her pain as too complex to confront, that I'd read her letter and somehow feel guilty for standing still while she ran ahead. She didn't think I was weak. She thought I was considerate, and she thought that was the same thing. I didn't rip it up. I didn't burn it or shove it in a drawer for some rainy day breakdown. I took a picture of it, stored the image in the same drive as everything else. A folder now called Closure. Then I dropped the paper in the recycling bin and took the trash out that night like I always used to. The wind was sharp. The lid slammed harder than usual. Felt final. The next morning, I walked back into my apartment with one goal. To erase her. Not out of spite. Not even revenge. But because she had already erased me. Quietly. Systematically. And now I was just catching up. I logged into our shared cloud again. Scanned it slower this time. Not for evidence. For remnants. Photos. Playlists. Draft messages from her to Adam. Buried in autosaves. One of them dated 6 months ago.